Often when I'm working with leaders, either as an executive coach or sometimes if I'm in a mentoring relationship, clients may bring to me what you might call ethical challenges. So as a leader, you have increasing responsibility, I think, to operate ethically, because how you operate speaks not only about yourself, but about the wider organisation that you lead. So leaders often face sometimes ethical challenges because they may be in situations where they have to do difficult things that can in some case cause harm. So a good example would be like downsizing. If an organisation has to downsize and you have to exit people, that's difficult. That's very challenging. And leaders then often struggle because at one level you want to be a good person, and you need to do sometimes difficult things, and therefore having an approach that allows you to be ethical in the way you make your decisions is important. Now, there's a lot of work been done on this. A lot of organisations have invested a huge amount of time. I've worked in organisations that have been really fixated on this, and I've had the privilege of work with a lot of good people in this space. I'd recommend a book by a chap called Professor Roger Steer. So he wrote a very good book called Ethicability, which we use a lot at BP. And there's a really nice model in this book, Ethicability, called the Right Model. So I often encourage clients to go and have a look at this, because I find it a useful tool. And it definitely helps, in my experience, leaders think very, very much more clearly about what can be often a difficult subject. What the Right Model does is it says, look, if you want to have support making ethical decisions, you need some kind of framework to order your thinking. So it gives you a sort of structure in terms of how to think about the ethical dilemma. And an ethical dilemma is effectively where there is probably no right or wrong answer. It's complex, and some level of harm is gonna happen. So I guess what you're as leaders doing is you're trying to figure out about the trade-offs around this decision. And so the Right Model, RIGHT, that's how it's spelt. It stands for these things. So right is, first of all, you ask the question, what do the rules say? So you should go and say, so what are the rules in this situation? What's the legislation? What's the law? What's the company policy? Are we really, really clear on what the rules say? So you look at the rules first, you go there. And after you look at the rules, then the next thing you look at is the I, which is your intuition. So really you effectively search your heart, you discuss with your colleagues and your peers where you can around the decision, and say, at some intuitive level, what do we feel is the right thing to do? So if the rules were sort of like the rational, it's written down. What does our intuition say it's the fair, right thing to do? And then the next thing you look at then is you say, okay, you ask the question, what's the good? What's the good in this decision? If we make this decision, what's the good that it causes? And you make a list of those things that are the positive goods. And then you look at the sort of the opposite side and say, well, what's the harm? So the fourth letter, the H, is harm. So again, you'd make a list of the harm that this would cause, and to a degree, you're trying to then weigh up the good versus the harm. And then the last part of the model, of the Right Model, which is T, I really like, which is what's the truth. And when you step back and say, okay, when you look at all these things, in essence, what do we think the truth is? And the test for me, this way to explain to me, when I was taking through the model, was almost, if you were like telling this to your mother, if you're having to explain to your mother what you're about to do, what would your mother say? What's the real truth of this? And no one of those stages, so RIGHT, rules, intuition, good, harm, truth, no one of those is going to give you the answer. But in combination across all of them, it really does force you to think about things very carefully. Inevitably, it gives leaders at least a framework that they can make decisions on. I think by having that framework, then it takes away some of the anxiety and some of the stress. It still is very difficult to make those kind of ethical decisions, and where any harm is caused, as human beings, as leaders, it's a difficult burden to carry, but at least you feel like you've gone through a process where you've given it as much thought and consideration as is humanly possible. So say, if you're facing ethical dilemmas, I would highly recommend the book Ethicability and The Right Model by Roger Steer. Thank you.